All right, well, I'm very happy to be here with some of our key people on this whole Blister Labs thing that we really, well, we launched early 2022, but it was really at last year's Blister Summit that we kind of did a bigger presentation to the world about what exactly we're up to with this new program. And so, what we're going to do is first have Dr. Jeni Blacklock talk a bit about, well, answer the question, what is Blister Labs?
We can help explain that one. So Blister Labs, as Jonathan was stating, was launched last year, really during this time. And I would say over the last year, we've made quite a bit of progress, both in the ski and mountain bike industries. So, of course, today we're focusing on the ski, and we have our rest of our panelists here who will talk a little bit more in detail of some of the tests that we've been developing. Now, the idea of Blister Labs is to take quantitative and qualitative data and try to make a better story, right? So we have in-lab gear testing, we have in-field dynamic testing, we have reviews, and we're trying to make sense of the whole thing. These are big data problems. We've integrated, skill sets in robotics, biomedical engineering, aerospace engineering, advanced data science, AI, machine learning, and we're trying to solve these bigger questions that a lot of you have been asking today as well, right? So, what are all those variables and how do you test those variables and how do we tackle those variables? Because what we do in the field when we ski is very dynamic, right? And there's so many instances of things that we can't predict always. And so how can we better understand how our gear is going to react in those types of situations? So that's the idea of Blister Labs. And it's been a fun project. It's been it's been great working with Jonathan and listening to all of you and what your questions are. And we're like, wow, those are great questions. Maybe we can try to tackle those. And, we started with a few projects and they're just expanding. And it's been we're all really passionate about this and trying to make a difference in this industry. So we'll see what happens. Pass it off
Sean Humbert, who starred in multiple Gear 30 podcast conversations now. Sean, talk a little bit more about what has been happening on the ski side of things, skis specific, in the ski equipment broader world.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, welcome everybody and thank you all for sticking around. Appreciate your attendance and your attention. So let me just give you a quick overview of kind of what we're doing from the ski side. Jeni mentioned we're also doing mountain bike stuff and a lot of other things. So I think our two main goals from the Blister Labs perspective, first is to transition tools from, say, robotics research and algorithms into the outdoor industry, in particular gear review. Okay, so I personally have been doing research in robotics for 25 years, and over that time period, there have just been amazing tools that we've developed in my lab and other labs across the country. So, and also as an outdoor enthusiast, I've always wanted to transition these tools into something that I love and I'm very passionate about. So that's our first goal, is to transition these tools. And then our second goal is to try to close the gap between what we do in the lab in terms of benchtop or sort of testing, sort of machine level testing, and what we do in the field, right? So again, I think a major issue right now is, the standard engineering tools work for benchtop tests and we can go measure stiffnesses, we can go measure geometry and so forth. But how does that actually translate to how the ski performs in the field? Okay, so those are our two main goals, right? We want to close that gap and we want to transition these tools. So in the last year, we've done a couple of things. So let me just briefly highlight those and I'll hand it off to Leo and Travis here to kind of elaborate a little bit more on those things. So from the ski side, we've got two approaches. One's a scalpel and one's a shotgun. Okay, so the scalpel is sitting on the table over there. Right. And so what we're doing here is we're taking distributed sensory systems, we're mounting those on the ski. We've got 10 stations. So we can actually take that ski out in the field under different conditions with different skiers. We can measure the kinematics, right? And then with a little bit of processing, we can get all the deformations of the ski. This is happening at 600 times a second. So we can actually see how that ski is behaving dynamically in the field under different sorts of conditions. Now, the next thing we're doing with this, you do a little bit of modeling on top of all the data and the signal processing, and that allows you to estimate the loads on the ski in the field, right? And in my personal opinion, that's the gap we have from the standard engineering tools. Hey, I'm going to go measure like natural frequencies and modes and stuff like that on a benchtop of a ski. Again, we don't know how that translates. I think some of you who are ski designers probably have a good intuitive feel for some of the pieces of that, right? We want to lay the mathematical foundation of that and really rigorously kind of lay that down. So that's our scalpel. So it's in-field measurement, it's modeling and signal processing to get the data to really truly understand what that ski is doing in the field. Okay. Now, our shotgun is kind of what we talked about on the last podcast, Jonathan. So as you know, there are so many variables in ski design, right? There's the skier aggressiveness level. There's the conditions. Did you have a beer or two at lunch, right? Like there's so many things that go into that. And that's a huge space to explore. So if we try to do that with a scalpel, that's going to take us forever. Right. So what we also are doing is, what I do in my research, and I've deployed and developed systems that are machine learning AI based. Okay. And, again, that term gets thrown around quite a bit. But in one sentence for the layman, like what machine learning or what AI is, it's taking a complex system and approximating it using data and training, instead of, say, writing down a bunch of complicated equations and trying to understand things from Newton's perspective. Right. So now these tools will allow us, with the data and then with our qualitative reviews from all the experts here at Blister that are skiing the skis, we take those two things and then we can really explore that space and kind of uncover, what are the dynamic aspects of a ski and a turn that are really driving that sort of, hey, that ski feels planted, or that is a damped ski, or that's an undamped ski, right? So our vestibular system and our somatosensory system, and all our vision, like that's how we decide if a ski, we kind of take all those measurements our body does, and our brain decides if that ski is a great ski, like again, planted or damped, right? We're going to be able to explore that space using machine learning and AI techniques. And that, like, again, it's a shotgun. It's going to allow us to kind of quickly cover lots of things, figure out where the interesting parts are, and then we'll take the scalpel and we'll go further analyze that further. So anyway, so that's a real high-level overview. Now, this last year, we've developed the scalpel. And we've got a live demo for you guys as soon as the session wraps up here in the Q&A. You guys can come up and bend and kind of torque the ski, and you kind of see the data coming off the ski real time. So you kind of see the quality of the data that we're getting. We've also got some movies from some of the runs I've done. We can play those too. So again, that's what we've done this for the past years, develop that system, and we can apply it to any ski. We're also applying it to mountain bikes and all sorts of other stuff. But looking forward, we're bringing in Travis and some of the AI and ML components of this. Right now, in order to properly do that, we need lots of data. So our next step really is to get a couple more types of skis implemented, get the Blister folks skiing them, as much as we can for the rest of the season. So that'll be our starting point looking forward for the next year. So scalpel and a shotgun. So I think Leo's going to talk now a little bit about the scalpel, and Travis will talk about the shotgun.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Sean. I'll dig a little bit more into the ski and exactly what we're measuring. So Sean mentioned we've got IMUs on there. So does anybody know exactly what an IMU is? Yeah, we got one. So an IMU it stands for Inertial Measurement Unit, which doesn't help much, but it's probably the most common sensor in the world. Probably besides a camera, it's the most common thing we use. So IMU is in everybody's cell phone. So that's what picks up how many steps you're taking. That's what helps you, that leveling function in your phone. IMU is measuring your inertial movements as you're moving. So that's what we're measuring on the ski. So as Sean said, we've got 10 IMUs on the ski. They're distributed spatially across the entire ski. And he also mentioned that we're getting super rich data from this. So each IMU gives us 6 data quantities. We can dig into what those are at a later stage, but 6 data quantities over 10 different IMUs, so that's 60, and we're getting that 600 times a second. So that's a lot of data that we're handling right here. And it's a super rich data set. And something that I've been thinking about also is, instead of trying to characterize skis and understand how different skis react, you could also possibly use the system to characterize different skiers. So maybe I am a complete novice and Sean's pro, right? We're going to ski in very different ways, no matter what skis you put us on. So that's something else that I've been interested in, is trying to characterize different skiers. And I feel like this could possibly lead, it could possibly work into some of the reviews also. Like if a reviewer is a absolute pro, then maybe what he's saying isn't as applicable to a complete novice like me. And the analogy that I like to use there is, if Tiger Woods tells me to use some specific golf club, I'll say, yeah, sure, but, I don't swing it like you do. I don't have the speed, I don't have the precision. Like, I'm not sure if that's a good fit for me. So that's just another completely different direction that we could take this. We could start to characterize the different reviewers of the skiers, different skiers, and that could work into the reviews ultimately. Travis, you want to talk a little bit about the AI you've been thinking about?
Yeah, I do. So we have this ski. Leo's put a lot of time and effort into designing these sensors, and like he mentioned, these are measuring inertial movement. They're measuring acceleration, similar to your cell phone, and how it senses when you've twisted your cell phone horizontal versus landscape. And Leo's put a lot of work into taking that data, taking these inertial measurements, and showing how that results in the bending of the ski or the rotation of the ski. And so we can get some really keen insight into what is happening to our ski as we encounter various terrain. What's happening to the ski when we go over a rock, when the land shark bites us? How does the ski react to that? How does the ski react when we kind of land off of a jump poorly? So we can get really keen insight into how our ski behaves into different scenarios. But we're hoping and plan to use machine learning to extend that beyond how is the ski behaving, but let's integrate that with some of Blister reviewers. Right now we have doctorate level data analysis going on. We have experts looking at this data and analyzing it. But then we also have industry leading reviewers that are looking at the same skis, but from a different light. And I think we can use machine learning to marry these two ideas. So as an example, if Luke takes this ski and does something gnarly on it, maybe he's just ripping down the groomer. He's like, that's a chattery ski. We can take the data from the ski, we can take the actual flexure and movement of the ski in the field as Luke is skiing it, and we can map that to this idea of chatter. So we can start to take the behavior of skis, map it to how Luke is experiencing the ski in some certain scenario, and then extrapolate from there. So perhaps combining that with other reviewers who are skiing a similar ski, but they don't get a sense of chatter. We can kind of try to extrapolate and say, okay, well, Luke's sensing chatter in this environment. Kristen's not experiencing chatter, and hopefully we can try to, from a mathematical point of view, take you as a consumer and place you in this plot, in this field of data, and say, well, here's how you might experience this ski. So I think that's an interesting avenue that machine learning can lead us into, is marrying this expert level data analysis with industry leading reviewers and seeing how we as consumers can benefit from that and get better insight into what we might experience as we consider buying a ski. So that's where I see machine learning taking this project, and it's something I find very interesting.
So this is what I want to do. In a bit, I want to talk about another new thing that we're doing at Blister Labs called Blister Community Reviews. But before I talk about that, I want to open it up to questions from you on what you've just heard here. So let's do that first. Any questions? So the question is, with respect to some of the somewhat similar testing we're doing on the mountain bike wheel set side of things. When we're getting this data, covering through a rock garden or through a berm, we're not displacing surface area. Turns out when you ski, you're displacing quite a bit, pushing snow, etc. So what do we do about that difference? How relevant or worrisome is that difference?
So let me just start. So first of all, the two sets of data are very different in the sense that the wheel set data is displacement data captured with a motion capture system. That's why the course is very limited. This ski we can take up and turn it on for 10 minutes and do like a 10-minute run and get all the different conditions. It's a lower level data. It's velocity acceleration instead of position. But again, from the analysis and the modeling we do, we get to predict all the loads. So whether we're pushing snow or not pushing snow, that's not necessarily the issue. The issue is that we can actually, through our analysis, predict the loads on the ski real time, 600 times a second, right? Now the mountain bike stuff's a little bit different. I think we were trying to measure deflections there, right? Just to understand and characterize wheel sets. So that was a little bit more of a component characterization versus like an environment characterization, right? So I think that is the slight difference there, but I'll let Travis talk to the wheel set stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad you watched the video. So Sean brought up that these are different methods of measuring. So right here on the skis, we have the IMUs. These are measuring acceleration as the different components move up and down. And then in the mountain bike video, which if you haven't watched, you should, because it's awesome, we are tracking the position of these fiducial points, these kind of reflective dots throughout time. So first thing I want to say is we have the live demo here for the skis, but on Friday, we're also giving tours of the building. So if you want to come see the mocap system in the basement, come talk to me afterwards because I love that building and I love showing people around. But to your question, the mountain bike rims, we're interested in how is the mountain bike rim deforming under different obstacles. And it is true that different environments may impact that user's experience. For the skis, we are trying to broaden that a little bit, and that's where machine learning comes into play, is we can choose how many different features of the environment to include in this classification. So when Luke rides the ski, or Kristen, or Leo, because we're opening up the community reviews, although I doubt that'll be with this ski. Anyway, you ski the ski and you exhibit some chatter. We can take note of the skier themselves, the weight, the actual ski that's being used, and then we can also start to label other characteristics. So we can label in your review that the snow was slushy that day, the snow was icy that day, and then take that into account as we use machine learning to extrapolate how you might experience a ski in various different environments. So with this method, we have a lot of freedom to incorporate different tags or hashtags, labels into our data set as we collect them.
So the question is, can you say a bit more about the utility of what we're talking about and where we think we might be able to make, because I say this nonstop, if this isn't useful to actual skiers and mountain bikers out there to help them figure out what they're going to buy, I don't care about any of this, to be honest. So it has to, and this is every time we do anything, we all talk about this. What is the utility here? Where do we see this going?
So this is something, I'm glad you asked this question. We have put a lot of thought into how this can be used from a consumer standpoint and reviewers. But I think there's a really great opportunity to start to use this, either the data that we collect or this general methodology to inform ski design itself. And where I get excited is thinking about how we design a ski profile for a specific rider. Maybe it's for your average height and weight human who skis, which is likely a male. And then maybe we scale ski profiles for different body shapes. But to me, it's not clear if just scaling a ski profile is going to give the same experience for that rider ski combo, I guess. So where I'm really interested to see how this goes is how we can use this data for ski design and how we might incorporate our models that we obtain into ski design for making skis that perform really well for a wide variety of riders, whether that's short, light, male, female, tall, heavy. So I think there's a lot of potential here to influence ski design, and I'm excited about that.
I think we can pull out a lot of material information also, which I think could be interesting. And there's a lot of studying and advancement in materials, and so it'd be interesting to see what we can do with pulling out looking at the equations and pulling out some of the numbers and values to see if we can better understand material properties as well. Yeah. And those effects in the ski industry.
Cool. Do you have anything? No. Okay. Yeah. Let me just one last thing. I really want to be able to explore the design space a bit more, right? So I want to be able to get to a point where we have simulations that are realistic enough so I can go run 1 million simulations over a night and have it pop out like an optimal ski, right? We can't do that right now. And the reason we can't do that right now is we don't have the loading conditions that the skis experience in the field, right? And this thing right here is the first thing that's really going to give it, plus our modeling and all of our analysis will give us the loads in the field for lots of different conditions, right? That's what we need. That's the missing piece. I can go do the standard engineering analysis, which I think a lot of design companies do. But again, we haven't connected that to the other thing. Once we do that, then we can really explore the design space. I think the birth of modern skis was around 1920s when they started putting metal edges on things, right? In the 40s and 50s, we had some material advancements. But, in between the 20s and now, we put a man on the moon, but it took us 70 years to figure out reverse camber and, profile. Right? Why did it take 70 years to do that? We have the tools to do it now. And we have the tools that we've been developing on the research side to go get to the point where I can run 1 million simulations in one night and have it pop out a ski. So that's what I'm personally excited about.
Who wants to rephrase that question?
So I can rephrase it as, is there a way to incorporate the heterogeneous materials and structure of the ski into the analysis? And yes, right? So given the fact that we can build a simulation now with realistic loading conditions on a ski, we can go vary those properties now, right? So we can start to think about playing with, different types of material for the core instead of wood core, for instance. We can vary, not just stiffness profiles, but damping and mass profiles as well. So we can, I think, in the next year or two, we can get to a point where we can actually vary these types of things and understand what the in-field performance is, right? So I think that's how we connect the heterogeneous materials and the material design to the data that we're doing.
So the question is just again about, say, different skier styles and different skier abilities. Are you all thinking about how to take that into consideration and spit back or capture meaningful data? I think we talked about that already a little bit, but
yeah, let me just summarize real quick. So I think the way the human interacts with the ski is through the boot. So if you can measure what's going on in the boot, you're measuring the skier, right? The position, because all those forces and moments are coming through the boot, right? So I think the simple answer is yes, you understand the boot, you understand what you're talking about, right? But also you could think about instrumenting the human, and we've actually done that on a couple of our runs. We've got little sensors we're putting on muscles and things and everything. So again, you can build this, and I think there's 10 to 15 years worth of work here, right? And I love that you're thinking ahead about this stuff. But yeah, again, all of this can be done. But I think what's important for all of us up here is that we bite off things we can solve and solve the small pieces, and then stack everything up and have a nice mountain at the end of the day.
Oh, I like this question. So the question is, through this data capture and modeling, do we like our chances of coming back and saying, for a new skier, we have data to say that a ski perhaps of this width with these characteristics is likely to work better for more new skiers for these reasons than other shapes, designs, etc.
Absolutely. Let me just take a first quick cut, and then I'll hand it to you guys. I think so, right? The idea is to try to understand the dynamic phenomena of the ski, in the field during turns and straight away, like whatever the loading conditions are, right? I think if we do that, then we can understand how to design a ski that gives you sort of this planted, damped kind of feel, right? Even if you're not being aggressive on it, for instance, this is absolutely something that will fall out of this. So again, I've been answering all the questions. So if you guys have anything to say.
My thought is that we can use this instrumentation, use this to design a ski that is maybe going to make a beginner skier have a really good time out on the slopes. But to your point of safety, that's where we need to start bringing in design of not only the skis, but the bindings and the boots, and where we need to start marrying the whole industry together. And that ties not only to the conversation earlier today about ski bindings and ski binding design, but what somebody over there asked about instrumenting the boots. And then Sean brought up how we've also done work in the lab of instrumenting the humans themselves, putting sensors on different muscles and seeing how they activate as we go through the ski run. So that's a really long-term goal of trying to marry the whole industry of not just skis and how's a ski going to behave for a beginner, but how do we get the appropriate binding and how do we get the appropriate boot? And then we can complement that with leading-edge research in the kinematics and biology of humans and think about, well, how is our ski bending, but also how is a beginner skier, what's their form? How are they leaning into the ski? What muscles are they activating? So that's a really big field to be pursued in the coming years.
I was just having this conversation today on a chairlift with a product manager of a brand that is at the summit. And it was, you probably heard me because I was getting all fired up. So if you were anywhere in my vicinity, but we published an article on Blister a while ago now called The Case for Fatter Rockered Skis. And we also have talked about how a wider ski than I see in the vast majority of demo fleets and a ski that doesn't have basically a dead flat tail, which I also see in demo fleets and on the feet of inexperienced skiers in lift lines. This isn't a hypothetical. I see it all the time on the mountain. And I have argued for years now that equipment is not serving these people. It is not helping them enjoy their experience on the mountain. We know that the statistics of first-time skiers who never come back is wildly high. And to me, I see this as a massive problem in the ski industry. And I don't see many manufacturers particularly concerned about this. And I don't know why. And so it's also funny because I will get some comments in either on the website or I see this on some ski forums where people will sort of put a link up to these articles that we've written and then be like, these guys are idiots. Don't they know that it's, a skinny ski will make it way easier to tip a ski on edge? Duh. And I'm like, have y'all ever gone out skiing with somebody that's never been on skis? They don't know what to do with edges. So it's so backward. It's so not thinking about our thinking in terms of like, what is a beginner actually doing? And if you're the beginner that was like, yeah, I went out this one day and I just started making like clean carbs across the mountain, like, please come, I want to shake your hand. That's not what we do. So I think we've got it kind of twisted. We know what you're supposed to do. That's very different from what new skiers or inexperienced skiers are actually doing on the mountain. And I'm shocked that our industry as a whole has not thought through this at a higher level. But anyway, I'm gonna stop. I didn't yell as much that time, but like, we got to do better on this. Yeah. Again, we talked in our previous panel about like the future of the sport. How about just put people? I always say this. I'm like, if someone's like, oh, I've never driven a car, and we gave them a car that didn't have power steering, they'd be like, you know what is really not fun at all? Driving. That's what we do to newbies. We put them on gear that is not helping them at all enjoy that first time on the mountain. And I think that's pretty criminal if you're in the gear business. So the question is, as we get more data and have more findings, what is the plan or program for distributing that data to snow sports industry companies?
Yeah, again, it's a great question. I don't think we have the complete answer to that at this point. As I mentioned right at the beginning of my little speech here, I just want to see the tools from robotics transition to the outdoor industry, right? So that's what we're trying to do right now. We're going to be building data, and there's going to be IP associated with this. And, again, I come from a research community, so I'm not a product designer. I don't own a company. I'm not trying to I don't have a bottom line I have to worry about. So my personal sort of perspective on this is that I just want to see the tools get transitioned. How the designers use those, it's completely up to them. I'm hoping that we can sort of publicly release stuff and a level of understanding, and we'll get some papers published on this stuff relatively soon, I think, as well. But I think there are designers out here, and I don't know what every company is doing. I've talked to a lot of the lead designers for many companies, and I know, at least from those discussions, that there's a gap between the standard sort of engineering measurements you do on a benchtop and what's in the field, right? And I think what we're doing with Blister here is bridging that gap. And if designers want to take advantage of that, that's great, right? So I'm not trying to pick winners or losers or anything, but for me personally, I just want to see the tools transitioned, right? And I'd sleep a lot better with that.
And we are talking with a number of designers and brands already, and a lot of companies have reached out. This is kind of behind the scenes stuff, but interest from the mountain bike industry, from the ski industry, has been significant. And, we've welcomed that. We invite product designers and builders to come through. We're having people come through to see the incredible facility at Western Colorado University. We're having designers talk with and meet with students and faculty. Those conversations are happening at this summit. So we will be building on that, growing that. That stuff, though, is happening right now. But, part of it is we got to do the work first. And everybody here is very clear about that. So we don't need to have, the 37 steps and then this is how we're going to distribute. Like, let's do the work. And that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, we do invite folks to come out and tour and brainstorm and ideate and talk about all these great things that are happening. So if you are in that ski designer world realm and want to brainstorm with us, feel free to come by. We're open door, and we're just down the street from here. I know not all of you are from the Gunnison Valley, but more than welcome to come by anytime.
Yeah, and contact me and we'll set something up. And that's what we've been doing, some of that, and we'll be doing more of that. So.
Yeah, and at a certain point, I'd be happy to come give talks at places. We've talked to Tomas at DPS, Jed at K2. So I'd be happy to, again, I think once we get to a certain maturity level, I'd be happy to come give a talk and kind of show you the quality of data. You guys can come up afterward and kind of see what data we're generating off the skis. And this system we can install on any ski.
So let's turn the page for a second. Another thing that I've been thinking about for quite a long time, and we are now in the last 10 months or so, we've been working on this, is this thing I keep mentioning, Blister Community Reviews. So here's one of the realities with what we've done at Blister over the last 12 years. We have a relatively small team of reviewers, right? And the reason we do that, there's multiple reasons. One is, I didn't know this when I started Blister, but turns out finding individuals who are particularly good at articulating the nuances of what a product is or isn't doing is a weird skill set. It's all I can say, but it has nothing to do. I think a kind of obvious mistake is someone's like, oh, my friend is an incredible mountain biker or skier. He or she should review for you. That has gone badly so many times over the last 12 years. It is two different skill sets, right? So an incredible mountain biker might just not be good at communicating what he or she is feeling or what he or she likes or dislikes about a product. And that's just borne itself to be true many, many, many hundreds of times over the last 12 years. But one of the things that we have wanted to do is figure out how, in the most helpful and accurate way, broaden the community of our reviewers. And so, I was like, well, let's start this thing called Blister Labs. And then from there, we can start working on this. But basically, what we are doing here is we will still have our relatively small team of reviewers. You will be able to read Luke Kappa's ski reviews for the foreseeable future. But what we get to do now is, through this Blister Community Reviews initiative, the goal is to start reaching out to the global community of skiers and mountain bikers to start. And what we're trying to do is come up with the best, simplest way to capture meaningful feedback from people who aren't weird and don't review product for a living, right? That's a trick. And this kind of started for me, sorry, Amazon.com, but I'm shocked when I go, say, onto an Amazon.com at the incredibly bad level of product reviews that I'll read on virtually anything I'm looking at, right? So we've got one of the biggest, wealthiest companies on earth, and I think their user reviews are generally terrible. So the idea with Blister Community Reviews is to create a system where somebody who lives in Japan or in Vermont or in Australia can be led through a hopefully clear, simple, but meaningful system to, and we'll guide them through this, to be able to effectively not write a 10,000 word ski review, but capture that data of their experience on a ski or mountain bike, etc. And from there, we then will have the ability to grow a massive catalog of reviews. Sometimes when people are like, hey, you don't have a reviewer who is exactly my weight, whether it's really light or pretty heavy, or none of you are 6'7" and I am, right? And we have talked a lot about why we don't actually think that's the most meaningful thing. Far more important to actually be able to be good at the review thing to start. But this is going to open that up now. And as we get this going, and as more people contribute to the community reviews, the intention is to then put in a filter system, hopefully a pretty good one. And you might say, I'm 6'7". I don't care what anybody shorter than whatever you want to say, 5'10", 6'2", I don't care what those folks have to say about a ski. You can filter that out. You can do that by weight. You might be able to do that by location. And we can play with that system. So again, I've never been tempted. I don't want to do bad, sorry, Amazon. I don't want to do bad Amazon.com, user reviews on the site. I want to do this in the most helpful way possible. And I think through some of the things that we're working on at Labs, we're going to be able to put this structure in place that's really exciting to me because, again, somebody might be like, I really want to see what Luke Koppa thought about that, but let's now see like what the rest of the global community thinks about that. Where are the differences? Or, another example, if you don't care what an intermediate skier is saying about a ski, or maybe you don't care about what an expert skier is saying about a ski, through the filter system, you can weed that stuff out. And I think we got a shot. Again, we do a few things at Blister, but one of the main things we do is continue to think through how can we put out better, more accurate, more useful consumer product information. And y'all just heard from some very smart people about what we're doing on the machine learning side of things and dynamic modeling. But we think on this element, we've got a shot of really upping just the utility of Blister, frankly. And hopefully that gets people all around the world linked up with equipment that suits them better, and they're out having a better time and or safer time on the mountain. That's Blister Community Reviews. Now, sorry, one last thing to say on that. This is why Kristen's been trying to get everybody to download the app. We're rolling this out. You have it. You're the first to see this and start to play with this. When we've been saying to you, check out the community reviews element of this, literally the people at this summit are the first people to sort of see this and play with this and see what you think. So, congratulations, or sorry, you're the guinea pigs. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's why we would love to have you roll through this with some of the different products you've been testing here at the summit. See what you think. We will collect that data, and then we would love it if some of you would say, this was pretty great, or liked it, or maybe you hated it completely. Let us know about what you thought of the utility of this, because we're introducing it here, and the intention is to take it global. Yeah, so the question is, so with this community reviews, we were just talking about the significance of like the whole system, right? And so if somebody's weighing in on the ski, well, will we also require them to tell us what exact ski boot they were in and what binding they were on? And that's a great question. Right now, my impulse is to say no, because I think over time, we want to still make this user friendly, and that's going to be the thing. If it's like, hi, to do a Blister community review, this is going to take you 3 hours to complete it. Probably going to hurt, the number of folks who are willing to weigh in. I also kind of think that for this element, the community review, maybe we can invite people to talk about what boot or binding. But there's also something valuable maybe to just like hear from people all around what their experiences was of a ski, say, independent of a boot or binding. I think both are interesting. I'm not actually sure that one is better than the other. Maybe some of these folks disagree, though.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a preference on that, but you're absolutely right. I think eventually it'll need to go to the full spectrum of gear that you're using in that particular instance, right? But just like we're starting with on the technical side, you got to bite off small things that you can solve first, and then stack all those up as you incrementally solve all those, right? So ski is the natural place to start, I think, for the reviews, because that's what we're demoing mostly out here, right?
That's one roadblock that I have seen with what we're doing is we've thrown machine learning and AI around a lot, but one of the really big prerequisites for that is data. You need a ton of data, and I'm like, how are we going to get all this data? And I feel like these reviews could feed into that really well. They could be a really good marriage over here.
And Sean and I talked about that a little bit in one of the last Gear 30 episodes, the last Gear 30 episode that he and I did together. So the question is, as we roll out this Blister Community Reviews initiative, will we also sort of provide a bit of a guidebook of like, here are some frequently asked questions or just some steps about how to approach product review? There's an interesting one. We've heard from a lot of companies, and I'm sort of proud of this, but I was a little surprised initially when I started Blister. They were like, we often get the best feedback that we get about a product from you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's interesting. I didn't actually expect that when I started this. I was like, surely these companies have these incredible people on the, articulating the nuances of what a ski does or doesn't do, whatever. But we've heard that sometimes athletes are a little shy to be like, this thing didn't work for me at all. Or, as we've talked about, incredible, mind-blowing athletes aren't always the best. It's a different skill set. The articulation of what's happening. And so whether it's you have a circle of friends you trust, if they're like, well, we don't want to tell someone that the thing wasn't good. I don't know, but there's a lot of reasons. Another thing, by the way, is someone being given a product versus buying it. Okay, well, sometimes on the I bought this thing. Oh, well, that must mean you're going to give me the real truth. Confirmation bias on purchases is a massive thing. And so people that buy something and just want to then talk themselves into like, this is the best thing ever, that happens all the time. So it's funny to me to see the commentary or the thinking about, this is what's going to lead to a biased review or an unbiased review. I'm like, I think it's all a bit more problematized and trickier than sometimes people might think. Jeni, anything else along these lines?
I know early on we had talked about definitions, and I do think that that's something that could be incorporated pretty easily, right? Like a handful of a dozen terms that you use in the ski industry for demoing and what they mean and what it could feel like or an experience that you might feel. But again, it's a work in progress. And as you collect information and you're going through the data and you're like, we might need to come up with a better system here. Then you implement something else until you get a product that's really working for the data analytics part, but also for the community as well.
So the question is, do we have plans for, say, a ski company to send an individual ski to have testing done on it?
I'm going to let Jeni answer that one.
Oh, yes. I mean, yes, we would need to talk about it ahead of time and where the data goes and, looking at, are you okay if this is a pre-existing product or are you doing this for product development? Just because, again, we're a neutral entity, right, with being from university and we would have a conversation ahead of time, but we have the equipment to do that, and we just want to make sure that we're doing do justice for you and your company as well.
I was wondering how that data was going to get transmitted around. There's a lot of proprietary stuff.
Yeah.
Companies, and I don't want to step on other people's proprietary stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. That's a great question. But yes, we have the equipment and the techniques to do it. So we would have a conversation ahead of time just to make sure we're all happy with the result. Well, not with the results, but what we are publishing. Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks to all of you for hearing what we're up to. And thanks to all of you. I say this every time, but it is such a pleasure to work with all of you and, work with smart friends. It's my best advice in life. But it is a real joy, and I know how smart you all are and how hard you all work and how much fun you also are. And it's just been a real pleasure. And we're just going to keep on the work side. And thank you so much for the great questions tonight and for your interest. And we will do our best to make the whole community proud of what we're doing here and make this a thing that is, as I always say, really valuable to skiers and mountain bikers and people who are passionate about getting outdoors. So thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you.